Would you like to speed up your productivity? Take a few minutes to establish an authentic connection with your team and your client, and you'll find things go a lot faster. Stay tuned. Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. Today, we're going to talk about the fact that connection can actually speed up productivity, even though sometimes it feels like it can slow things down. So what do I mean by connection? What I really mean here is taking the time to connect with your teammates, your team members, in my case, my clients as well, and spending time just checking in. How is everyone doing? Done a previous podcast on that. But I haven't really connected it to how it really actually increases productivity. And I think this is kind of an exciting and somewhat paradoxical fact, but in my experience, it is 100% true. And it's happened to be, about 3 or 4 times in the last few working days. So I thought, this is probably worth thinking about and worth talking about. So I want to see if this reflects your own experience as well. So it's one of those things that when you really take the time in a conversation, maybe it's Monday morning, maybe it's beginning of the session with your client, if you're doing that, where you just say, hey, how are you doing? Checking in, at Coach, we do a positive focus a whole lot. And that conversation may go on for a few minutes. We talk about building rapport with new prospective clients and such. But also it makes a ton of sense to do this with your team as well. And in really thinking this through, why is it so important? Well, because it builds trust. And trust is absolutely essential, especially to our work world these days. Stephen M. R. Covey, who, by the way, wrote a book called The Speed of Trust, has a great quote. He says, trust is the new currency in our interdependent, collaborative world. And I would add transparent to that framework as well. So what happens when you actually take the time to connect is that you build the trust. It helps people warm up. If you ever jump into a meeting and you just start with the rational stuff that has to get done, people are actually only bringing a part of themselves to that meeting. And what I've found is that people are much more likely to speak up when they have a consideration or a concern or express an opinion that may or may not be the same one that's on the table at the moment, but only if they are really made to feel safe. So if you're familiar with Google's 2-year research project on creating psychological safety, it really is the most important factor in terms of having a really productive team. So us taking the time to connect, which by the way, looks like asking, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? And you may spend a chunk of time on it where all of my task-focused friends may be itching to get to, I need to get to the agenda here. But actually taking the time to make that connection means that people actually speed up with the rest of the meeting. So again, it just really helps to warm people up, creates, as I said, psychological safety. And it also brings people to be present. And I don't know about you, but I know that I bring everything I have to bear when I'm fully present, when I'm not having to walk over something, when I'm not having to think about, push aside those thoughts, push aside those emotions so I can work hard to pay attention to what's in front of me. If I have a chance to just get rid of that and express it, then I'm good. And then I am actually fully present. And in fact, I have to give a shout out to an old friend and client who kind of helped me get started in my coaching career. And her name is Alita DeWall. And she helped us at Coach when she was originally, helping us when we were first starting to get associate coaches. She always had 2 questions with which to start the clearing session in the morning. And one of her questions was, is there anything you need to do or say in order to be fully present? Which is a very, very powerful question. And you could kind of tell when team members, because she would ask the coach and she would ask the team, when someone said, no, I'm fine. And clearly they weren't. You could tell something was going on. And when people said, you know what, I was a little distracted, traffic this morning, I got a fight with my kid, the dog is sick, whatever it was, when people could just say that and put it into the space and be heard, this is generous listening as per collaborative way, all of a sudden it was shared. And when our experiences are shared with other people, we've entrusted them, the other people that we're working with, with that information, all of a sudden it's not only on our shoulders. And it's like, all right, then now I can move ahead. Now that I've said that, I'm not hanging on to it. It's not only me knowing it. Then I can actually, share the rest of what's going on and bring your most creative and productive self to bear. So I really wanted us to kind of have that as our new way of being, depending on how your work world has changed with the pandemic, is to really take that extra time to make sure that you connect and have some questions at the ready. And one of the ways that we do this at Coach is we always start with a positive focus. So we'll ask, okay, what are you happy about? What are you excited about? What happened on your weekend? Now, sometimes what people also bring up is when things were not working, which is completely fine. It's not that you're actually forcing someone else to be mad on your behalf or to be upset on your behalf. It's just like, this is what's going on with me. And I find that really refreshing. It means that people can be real. And I found real people much more interesting to work with, much more fun to work with, and much more genuine to work with. And that's kind of what I want for all of us. I think that's how we actually produce the most effective entrepreneurial teamwork, is when we bring our whole and real selves. Again, really hard to do that if you're trying to compartmentalize. Again, it's not about oversharing for anyone who's worried about that. It's really just about saying what's true and then being able to move forward into the present and get what you need to get done. So a couple of fun examples of this. So I had just had a great meeting with one of my brilliant people on the marketing team, whom I adore. And we probably, in our half-hour meeting, spent 25 minutes talking about other stuff. And then in 5 minutes, bam, 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 got a bunch of decisions made. Same thing happens regularly with the other team members that I work with. When Nicole and I meet, my brilliant strategic support partner, she and I both grab our cups of tea or coffee, whatever our poison is that day, and we kind of catch up. How are things going? And then we plow through a ton of work for the rest of the day. And this is consistent. And I also do this with clients. If you ever in one of my workshops, the morning is actually a pretty nice pace. It's not stressful. I don't throw some big intellectual concept at people first thing. I'm like, how are you doing? Let's do a moving future. Let's start off with reflecting over the last 90 days. Where have you made progress? And get people warmed up. How are you doing? Is one of my questions. And people share. And sometimes they share good things. Sometimes they share not so good things. But I always start that way. And then I've had my workshop success directors go, Shannon, there's a lot of content left to cover. I'm like, don't worry. In fact, someone nicknamed it Shannimation. But the truth is, once I know that people are fully present in my room, be it a Zoom room or a real room, they get so much more done more quickly. And I know this because I've tried it the other way. I tried a couple of workshops without doing a positive focus or reflecting or connecting with people and how they were doing. And it was hard slogging. They were not mentally in the room till halfway through the bloody day. I have to tell you, that's a lot of work coaching when I don't have a person's whole brain with which to work. That was hard work. So I've learned it's actually way faster to do some kind of reflection. Progress could be experience transformer. It could be a positive focus. What worked, what didn't is the experience transformer. And once they've got that out of the way, bam, they're fully present and can really move ahead and absorb new information. But we can't take in a lot new if we're already full. So to some extent, you need to discharge some of that energy, could be emotional, could be intellectual, could be what have you, before they can take in new thoughts and new ideas. So I make sure I do this both front and backstage, to use coach terminology. I make sure I do it with the team. I make sure I do it with my clients. And I'm going to suggest that you might want to do that too before you jump into, especially if it's something you haven't figured out yet, a big project you need to strategize. Really check in with your teammates and find out, how are they doing? What's up with them? How was their weekend? I'm a fairly focused individual, and I have found that when I do it this way, I get far better, far faster, far more authentic results than if I try and skip over it and just get to the project planning. So I wanted to kind of throw that by you and see what you thought about that, because I think I'm not the only one. And I have to say, it allows me to be more myself, and it pulls that out from other people as well. And I would have to say we've got really, really great teamwork when that happens. And again, even though the proportions might be different than you expect in terms of how long things take, often taking those few minutes, doesn't take that long really, to connect means that the rest of your meeting can be that much faster and that much more productive. So something to try in your next few meetings is spend a few minutes connecting authentically and transparently. And you get to go first, by the way, since you're the one who heard it first, and see how that goes. So please let me know. I love hearing your feedback at questions@strategiccoach.com. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, here's to your team success.